It's a helpless feeling, not being able to do anything, not knowing anything, just having to wait for something.
Things could have been very different that day if I had taken my chances in the hallways.
No, I remember that day in detail. I mean, it just seemed like a slow motion day.
From the time that the door shut and we were trapped in there, we knew it had something to do with that. It was not a prank, or if it was a prank, it had gone horribly wrong.
All through high school, I took a lot of art classes, pretty much every art class I could. I mostly enjoyed drawing with pencil. After I graduated in 1998, that summer, my guitar teacher got a hold of me. They wanted me to draw a picture as sort of a gift from my senior class to the school. It was something that all the senior classes did as they graduated.
I recognized myself as an unusually passive and solitary person. When I search for significant events in my life, a blank sheet of memories without deep emotions appear. Something then, in my life, must have significantly happened, for I have not always thought or felt this way. As I search for the event that could have had such an influence, I reveal the day I went to school on April 20th, 1999. As a 15-year-old freshman at Columbine High School, the social and academic pressure of a student seemed to be enough to occupy my life. Attending classes, studying for tests, doing my homework easily summed up my day. It may sound as if I enjoyed this. It was nearly the opposite. I carried out the life of a typical good student, but contained a mind of emptiness and confusion.
And it took me about 6 months to finish. When I did finish it, I had it framed, took it to the school, gave it to them. They hung it up in the library where people could see it. After they hung it up, they had to get a check made for me, so that took a little bit of time. We planned on me picking it up before I had to go to work on April 20th, 1999. That morning, I actually slept in, so I didn't go get it. I had to go straight to work. I just took a shower and went straight to work. And figured I'll just get it later.
They heard on the radio that there was an explosion at Columbine.
I couldn't find reason for what I was doing, but my everyday life would continue. This naive notion that everyday life would continue is exactly what was challenged on April 20th, 1999. 2 students entered the school with intentions of immorality. That day, lives were taken, and lives changed forever. I was sitting at my desk next to my earth science partner listening to the daily lecture as a typical student does. Lunch was to come after the class, where I usually went home and slept or played my guitar. From the distance, a sudden boom interruptedly echoed. Our teacher paused for a moment and commented, "Look forward to chemistry next year. Many experiments lead to noises like that." The class, relieved, gave a little laugh. Relief was quickly diminished by the soon following hallowing of the fire alarms. The class, in a practiced fashion, responded by exiting the classroom, and with them, I followed. The unnecessarily loud ringing of the alarms soon became unnoticed to my ear as I stepped into the hallways to experience chaos itself. I was only but 10 feet away from my classroom when the ground beneath my feet began to rumble. I looked ahead at my directed path of safety, only to see the halls filled shoulder to shoulder with stampeding students and teachers running in a frightened frenzy in my direction. Obviously, this wasn't a routine fire alarm where one casually walks outside to safety. Something bad was happening. Stunned with uncertainty, trying to make any sense of what was going on, I turned to the other hall, which seemed to have relatively better conditions. I began to progress in that direction when the decibels of my atmosphere exponentially grew. Snare-like cracks and the roar of panic stopped me in my tracks, and all of a sudden that way too did not look so great. Looking back at my first path, I realized I had little choice anymore, for the crowd was nearly to me. Once again, I began to proceed down the hallway leading to the source of my only escape. With great haste, I ran for about 2 to 3 strides before, with overwhelming power, I was pulled into a science storage closet. I quickly turned and snapped, "What's going on?" A girl, who in most probability saved my life, gasped, "Stay in here, don't go into the hallways." Little choice did I have as others, some from my class, some from the large crowd of people, escaped into the same storage closet. 2 teachers entered last, and my science teacher, the last one, closed the door behind him. The once oversaturated halls, which was only 10 seconds earlier, were now a deserted container of echoing screams, alarms, and explosions. There were 7 of us inside the storage closet, and together in the back we all gathered. The 2 teachers who accompanied us guarded the door, and they sternly begged us to get down and out of sight, and so that we did. We hid inside the storage closet and eventually found a radio to find out what was happening outside the door. The words poured statically through the speakers as a cold chill shot through my spine. The gunfire and explosions seemed to slowly diminish, but what seemed like forever, we sat and listened to their rumbling in the distance.
Jefferson County 911.
Yes, I am a teacher at Columbine High School. There was a student here with a gun. He was shot out a window.
We've got help on the way, ma'am. Okay? Stay on the line with me. Okay.
The gun is right outside the library door.
The roads have been blocked off, and there's been several explosions and casualties. And I remember Greg saying, "Here, take my cell phone, go." Looking up, there were helicopters like everywhere. I had to drive up and said, my son's in Columbine, and he goes, just, go head on down to Leewood Elementary School. They said, make sure you go over to the table. Notebooks there with lists of kids that have checked in. I remember going to the first list and looking down there. Jacob wasn't on there. Going down to the next one, not on there. He knew what was going on. He'd make sure I would know that he would be all right, that he's okay.
I was sitting in a project status meeting, and the receptionist just burst through the door and said something terrible has happened at Columbine High School. Some strange instinct took over, and I just jumped out of my chair and ran out the front door. The elevator couldn't come soon enough. I ran to my car as fast as I could and just started driving. On the way, I tried to call my oldest son, Jason, and got no answer. I knew he was supposed to go to Columbine High School that morning. When I got to the Columbine Public Library, there was over 100 people just scattered on the grass out in front of the library. I recognized a lot of them because our kids had played sports together over the years. They had a master list of all the kids that had been accounted for up on the wall. I went up there and scanned the list twice, and Jake wasn't there.
I was at work, and I don't remember if I got a phone call or if I heard from a coworker that there were the shootings at Columbine. And the first thing I thought was, oh my God, my brother's there. I should probably, I hope he's okay. I wonder what's going on. I had no idea what to do or what to think. So they let me go home, and it was really a helpless feeling because I didn't know what to do. There wasn't anything I could do.
Then I saw Alex and Matt Parsons there, and he was always with them. So, they were there, and I remember yelling up I said, "Where's Jacob? Have you seen him today?" He goes, "I saw him earlier, but I haven't seen him. He's not with us." So I was like, okay, I said, "Let me know if you hear from him,
The first thing that I noticed when the door shut behind the 2 teachers, the other science teacher from down the hall, did have blood all over his face and shirt, which caught us all by surprise. At first we all thought it was a chemistry project going bad and set off the alarms. Once we all saw the blood on the teacher, we knew it was something much more serious. We all asked if he was okay, which he told us that it wasn't his blood, that he was okay, that it had splattered onto him in the hallways.
Then talking to you, you said that he wasn't over there at the library and you haven't heard anything. So I just remember pacing.
After sitting there for a few hours, I started to get really impatient because I'm not sure what the report said, but there were still very many explosions and just noises that you could hear several hours after the 2 shooters had taken their own lives, just kind of bombs being set off and such. So with limited knowledge inside the closet, we had to assume that there were still people inside the building and still doing stuff. I, for one, was getting really impatient. I was getting very antsy. I didn't like the feeling of just sitting inside a room and waiting for your fate to happen. There were 2 windows inside the storage closet, which I very much considered a possibility of breaking open and jumping to safety. It was about a 10-foot drop from the window. We could have all easily made it. Or, as an alternative, I wanted to flee from the room, go to the nearest exit, and get out of this school. There's nothing worse than just sitting there helpless, knowing that your life is at stake when you have no control over it, as opposed to waiting, because for all we knew, the killers could have found us before the SWAT team, and we would have just waited until something else happened.
From this aerial view, you can see the path the killers took through the school in purple. Jacob started in the science class in red and hid for almost 5 hours in the storage closet in blue.
The gym started emptying out. Fewer parents there. I kept looking at the books, and I'm guessing it's been 3.5 hours now of waiting. Just nothing. So it's kind of funny. It went from, okay, the panic stage, where is he, to take a deep breath, and it's like, okay, things kind of calmed down. It kind of went to, okay, now how do I deal with what if he's not alive? That's, I think, when everything kind of went into a slow motion thing, where that last hour seemed like 24 hours. He's got to be in that library. Something, he went there for some reason. The panic was over with. Now it's how am I going to deal with it? Then listening to the news saying, we think, everyone's out of the school. Everyone's out of the school. He hasn't checked in. So he's in that library.
Hours and hours went by. As I sat talking to my good friend Mark, the crowd seemed to dwindle. I remember turning around a lot to check how many parents had left, almost like I was continually recalculating the odds that Jake was okay. By 3:30, there were less than 10 people there. As Mark's son was located, he gave me a hug and walked off to his car to drive to his family. At about 4 o'clock, I scanned the list again with no match, and they said that all the kids had been rescued from the school. I sat down and looked at the grass. I tried to remain confident, but the truth is, I was very doubtful that this would turn out good.
Yeah, we all just kind of sat underneath the table, kind of tucked in the corner. One of the girls, we had a cell phone on her. We had 1 bar of signal, and her battery was, of course, dying. So we made one call about 4 hours into sitting in the storage closet. Her dad was actually in the police force, and so she contacted him and notified him that we were still in the school, because on the radio we had heard that they had believed to escort everybody that was trapped inside the school out while we were still inside the school.
Well, it was almost not giving up, but like I said, just, okay, what do I do now? They said, wait a minute, there's one last load of kids coming out. I remember, it was like, okay, the side of the gym door where they were coming in. I rushed over there and just was standing there.
And then about half an hour to an hour later, the SWAT team did come and get us out of the closet. That was all a pretty new experience. They had to treat us all like a suspect, of course. Had us line up against the wall and frisked us down. As soon as we entered the hallways, it just smelled like firecrackers, or just the smell of smoke and sulfur and all that. Definitely looked like nothing that I'd ever seen before, where the halls were just deserted. Like, you could see backpacks, sweaters, even shoes just laying out everywhere. It really did look like everybody just took off in the middle of whatever they were doing. You could see like paint chips, like our school had definitely been through something, and at the moment we still had no idea what. But there was like bullet holes as we ran out with a SWAT team around us. It was just quite a scene to run out from. But yeah, after they rescued us, we ran across the street, crawled through a hole in the fence to where we climbed on a bus, and they took us to Leawood Elementary.
Couldn't really see them get out of the bus, but as they came into the door, I could see them. And it was like one kid, another kid, another kid. the last person was him. It's like, oh my God, you know, sigh of relief. There's his hat, you know. And I remember just, you know, he came off, it was almost like he was in a daze. He wasn't really looking around, he just walked and kind of just stood there. And I remember just running up to him and hugging him. And just looking at him, you know, just kind of eye contact with him. He didn't say much. And then he goes, I gotta go, you know, because they whisked him off.
After sitting for about 10 more minutes, my cell phone rang, and Kathy told me she had just hugged Jacob, and he was fine. At that moment, I went from the lowest to the highest emotion I was capable of.
Yeah, the girl that pulled me into the science storage closet, and I believe her name is Sarah, I can't be sure on that, in all probability, saved my life, kept me from out of the halls where the danger was. She actually kept me comforted inside the storage closet for like the 4 or 5 hours we were inside there. It's easy to say that I could over my life. Things could have been very different that day if I had taken my chances in the hallways. I did talk to her during school the following years. I did have a chance to thank her. We haven't kept in contact since really the year that it happened. We did all go to Chatfield together, so we did kind of bump into each other a few times there while our school was being rebuilt.
Yeah, I just remember he was pretty quiet that night. And, you know, you forget how young he was. He was really young to have to go through that. Yeah, just that evening, I think we all slept in his room.
And there was just nothing I could do except sit and wait, so I did. And eventually found out he was okay, and that's all I really remember.
After the tragedy, I quickly grew the desire to put it behind me. I realized it was impossible to forget, but I wanted to move on and take what I had learned from that day with me. I wanted to stop living by the reasoning of I should do this and start listening to the I want to do this quality of me. My life wasn't to be lived the way others wanted or expected me to be. It was going to be lived the way that I wanted. It wasn't that I was dependent upon others or even did what others expect of me, but I certainly was not living the life I wanted to live. This idea was new to me though and took some time to adjust to. Not everyone knows what it is they want. Doing what I want has put me where I am today. There were many times where living by this value would seem to either get me in trouble or keep me at a distance from others. During the time of my transition years, I found myself to let go of things that when actually evaluated had minuscule significance. This tendency soon developed into my unusually passive outlook on life. I have gone from being confused and empty, living an ant-like life, to the person I am now. I live day to day, trying to enjoy many of the great pleasures of life, knowing how quickly or unpredictably it may be taken. My solitude helped me find what I truly wanted through the years of deep searching and thinking. I am attending college after taking a year off from high school. I plan to learn sound engineering to support my career as a rock musician.
After several years, I believe Jake came to terms with what had happened. Writing the essay about that day, after 5 years, was an important step for him. I look back, and I'm grateful for what was delivered to us that day. Our young son, Jacob.
Wasn't as outgoing as he was before. I think a lot of people meeting him after this would just say, oh, that's just Jacob, you know, he's a quiet person and not that, you know, outgoing or, you know, outspoken. You know, we know how he used to be. I mean, he was like a clown, you know, and he was real active and stuff, and I think he became more serious.